Hi, and welcome to this segment of Beer to Whiskey. I'm Russ Heaps, and I'm on my never-ending quest to spread the gospel of good taste and to find people that enjoy doing the same thing. So today I'm at the Peticolas Brewery in Dallas, Texas. And I'm sitting here with Michael Peticolas across from me there, who obviously is the honcho of the place, and with Grayson Hall, who is the marketing and distribution guy. And we're just going to talk a little bit about beer. So, Michael, how'd you get started? What got you on this road?
Where it really all started for me was 2010. I'm a licensed attorney here in Texas, and I had been practicing law for about a decade at that time. And actually, before I went to law school, I put together a list of the goals that I wanted to accomplish in the legal industry, and I came back upon this list in 2010. And as I was going down the list, I realized that I had accomplished everything that I set out to do in the legal industry. And I'm not the kind of guy that can just go through the motions. I need a challenge. And so at that time, I started looking for something else and thinking about, well, what else could I do? And ultimately what I decided to do was to turn my attention and my focus to what my passions are in life. And I have two very strong passions in life. One is soccer and the other is beer. And so at that time I started to think, well, all right, hey, I initially kind of started on the soccer route and quickly found that there really wasn't any kind of job here in a soccer-starved city like Dallas. We do have a professional sports club, FC Dallas, but I couldn't really find anything but the lowest level job to really step into that arena, and somebody has to inflate the balls. Yeah, someone's got to do that, and I think after having practiced law for 10 years, I decided I don't want to be the guy who inflates the ball. I want more. I want to do more. I want to be a little bit more challenged than just that. And there was certainly no team that was looking for a wrong side of 30 central midfielder that had ACL reconstructive surgery in both of his knees. So I turned my attention to my love of beer. And I enrolled with the American Brewers Guild and took their intensive brewing science and engineering course in 2010. And in 2010, I wrote the business plan for the Peticolas Brewing Company. And from that day, I, really dove headfirst into my love for beer and my passion for beer, and brewed our first beer here where we are on December 30th of 2011.
Wow, so you're relatively new. Is this the space that you started out in?
Yes and no. When I started, it's actually two spaces. This taproom space where we're sitting right now is actually separate and unique from the brewery itself. When I started the brewery, I only had the space next door where the brewery is sitting right now behind us, and it was a year later that I took over this space where we're sitting now, which we opened for our 1-year anniversary. It looked much different back then. What you see now is really 1 year old. We opened this tap room just a year ago, so we've really had this kind of slow, consistent, steady growth rate since that time, and it's always changing. I don't know what it's going to look like in 2 years from now. It's always changing.
Right. Was there a major hurdle of any kind? Is something spring to your mind, either in terms of motivating yourself to take this? This is a big scary step for somebody to take. In terms of that, or just in terms of getting it going. Period. Yeah,
the hurdles are always there. Every year, heck, every month, every week, there's another hurdle that you've got to get over, and you have to be, focused on not being overcome by those hurdles. I've always said, it's not what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you. But probably the biggest initial hurdle was the fact that I was trying to open a brewery where we're standing, or where we're sitting today, because it was not legal to brew beer. It wasn't legal to manufacture alcohol when I wrote the business plan back in 2010. So I literally had to change the law here in Dallas. I amended the Dallas Property Code and had to go through the City Planning Commission and the city staff, and ultimately through the City Council to get the property code changed to allow us to actually manufacture alcohol. So yeah, that was a huge hurdle in the early days, for sure.
I guess. Grayson, what got you involved? Are you a beer guy that figured out how to do marketing, or are you a marketing guy that came to work for a beer company?
I'm a beer guy. That was really kind of what got me motivated in this. I was stationed at Fort Hood in 2004. My sister had been working at a bar in Austin called the Ginger Man, and we just randomly, we would go in there and meet her before she would get off work and sit down and drink some beers. And at that time, I really wasn't a beer drinker. It wasn't until I had my first
2004?
IPA.
You weren't drinking until 2004? Wow.
Exactly, yeah.
I didn't know that. That wasn't on the resume.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing was...
That was doctor.
I mean, and in all seriousness, I just hadn't had a beer I liked yet. At the time, a lot of people were drinking, your Michelob Ultras and things like that, and Budweiser. And, there were, some European beers that were coming into market, but there just wasn't accessibility to them. I had my first IPA, and I fell in love. I spoke to a guy who owned a brewery at that time, and I just saw his passion for what he was speaking about. And I looked at my wife, and I was like, this is, when I get out of the Army, this is what I would really, I would love to be that passionate. Started drinking beer, really getting into it, and we moved back here, and I was kind of looking around and seeing who was opening breweries and what was going on in Dallas, and I came across Peticolas Brewing Company and kind of did some research and actually met these guys at a soccer match at FC Dallas. I actually met Melissa first, his wife, and talked to her, and she had made the suggestion. She was like, you really seem like you really enjoy what you're talking about, and you should come by and help us at tours and festivals and things like that. And so I did. I loved it. And so, kind of all of our stories here is we didn't really assimilate into, normal, I guess, 9-to-5ers, and that was me. I always felt like something was missing. And what it was is passion. It kind of fills you with a passion here that you just really, I can't get anywhere else. So that's kind of what got me into it.
So do you remember the IPA that
I
won
do.
you over?
Yeah, it was Dogfish Head 60 Minute.
Oh, really?
And then followed directly by a 90 Minute IPA. And actually, the owner of that brewery was the gentleman.
So you're a big hop guy.
That was just the first beer that I really gravitated towards. I really do like all beers. There's some I like probably a little bit more than others, but yeah, I will drink any beer you put in front of me, and I love it. I love the different styles. I love the complexities that you get in certain beers, and I can always find something to enjoy out of any beer that I drink, for sure.
Michael, what was your aha beer? What was the first beer that really rang your bell and said, yeah, I'm done with Coors Light?
Tell me the year, too.
It was this Dogfish Head 60 Minute and
2004.
90 Minute IPA. No, the road was a little bit different for me. I probably started down the road to enjoying your, not your traditional American light lager earlier than he did. Kind of where it started for me was more of what we were calling imports back then, right? Ooh, this import beer. Oh, let's get these import beers. And there's a friend of mine, in fact, he's really my brew sensei. We were friends way back before either of us were involved in the brewing industry. He had visited Germany, and one day we were out, and he said, here, you need to drink this beer. And it was Franziskaner Hefeweizen. And so I drank that beer, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, this is fantastic. And that kind of opened up my eyes to beers that weren't the mass-produced beers that are still being produced by big beer out there today. But there were definitely some others that grabbed a hold of me for sure. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale was one that I used to love. In fact, I still love it. That's something, I don't buy beer all that often anymore, but I'm always happy that if I am going to buy beer, if I find that selection there, I'm always all in on that. But really the other one for me too that really got me into thinking more about beer in terms of an expression as an art form, as an extension of cooking, was my mom. When I came home from college in the late 90s in El Paso, one day I come home and she brings out this big brown bomber and, flips the top, and I'm like, well, what's this? And she goes, oh, I made beer. I brewed some beer. And I'm thinking, you brewed
Mom.
beer? Well, yeah, exactly. And we went out on her back porch, which overlooks, Texas, New Mexico, and Mexico, and we enjoyed this beer, and it tasted better than what you're buying down at the street. And that was really my first exposure to home brewing. And I thought, man, this is just awesome, because it's about the experience for me. And it was then too. I'm like, I'm enjoying this experience of drinking this beer that my mom brewed and hanging out and talking to her much more than I did just going down the street and buying, a Budweiser or something like that. And that's, I guess, when I really got struck by the the homebrew bug, or was exposed to it and thought, you can really brew beer that is equal to, if not better than, what you're buying down the street at the store.
I lived in El Paso for about a year and a half. That was my real Texas, that was my Texas residence was in El Paso.
That's the West Texas. People say, I'm from West Texas. And I say, where? And whenever it's not from El Paso, I'm like, you're not from West Texas, man. West Texas is El Paso. That's West. That's on
West
the tip.
Texas. That's West Texas. So is Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, is that what you normally drink if you're not drinking your beer?
I really do primarily drink our own beer now.
Right.
I've got 4 taps at the home, and I always drink that. And we typically, when we go out, I go to the locations that pour our beer. I try to support the people that support us. So there's really not a regular beer that I go to and buy. Now, I will say that New Glarus Brewing Company in Wisconsin, they're one that is distributed exclusively in Wisconsin. And a lot of people have heard me talk about this brewery, and as a result, a lot of people bring me their beer. So I guess that's the only regular beer that I have in my fridge that I will go to and drink, on a consistent basis, because I fortunately just kind of always have a little bit of a backstock of it.
Yeah. How about you, Grayson? Is there something that you gravitate to when you can't get a Peticolas?
A beer that I really enjoy and I kind of look at when I can't get our own beer is a 512 IPA. I really, really like their beer. But yeah, I mean, mostly with as much, traction as Velvet Hammer has, I can always get that. And that was, for me, the first beer that I drank from Peticolas. And my first reaction to it was just like this spine-tingling, wow, Dallas has a really good beer. So to this day, I will order Velvet Hammer, and it's available. So it's one of those things that I can almost always get.
Yeah.
We like our beer, Russ.
We really do.
We're not
like
just
your
brewing,
beer.
and it's not lip service. We love our beer. We drink our beer.
And we're drinking Velvet Hammer, correct?
This is Velvet Hammer that we're drinking. That's right.
And what is it exactly?
Velvet Hammer is a 9% Imperial Red Ale. What it's really about to me, and what really speaks to one of our goals as brewers, is brewing a balanced beer. This beer is packed full of hops. There's a ton of hops in it. There's 85 IBU, but it is supported by a really big malty backbone, right? So when you drink the beer, you don't necessarily think, this is a malty beer. You don't necessarily think this is a hoppy beer. It really straddles that fence between malty and hoppy, and I think that's one of the allures of this beer. And it's the beer that we brewed when I mentioned brewing that first beer on December 30th of 2011. This is the beer that I brewed, and it fortunately for us kind of took off from the very first day that I released it, and was one that immediately caught fire here locally. So I have an affinity and an affection towards this beer because of that reason as well.
So had you been working on this recipe for a long time? I mean, was this something that you brewed a lot when you were just...
Yeah, when I was, I brewed a lot of different beers when I was home brewing, but every time I brewed this Imperial Red Ale, people were like, dude, now this beer is fantastic. This is better than anything else you've done. This is better than stuff I'm getting in the market. And so when it came time to brew the first beer, I had kind of thought, well, heck, if the experience that I've received from the people that have had beer that I'm brewing at home, I should start with that beer. And it reminds me of a story. I was sitting down with a distributor before the brewery was even open. He knew I was going to open up a brewery, and he said to me, so what beer are you going to brew first? I'm like, I'm going to brew this Imperial Red Ale. And he goes, reds don't sell. And I immediately am going, oh my God, what have I done? Here I am. I'm talking to a guy who sells beer, distributes beer for a living. Yes, this is what he does. And isn't he? Those don't sell. Yeah. But I do take a little bit of pride in, about a year after this meeting in the brewery had got up and running and started to gain some traction, I ran into him, and he told me, all right, so reds don't sell except for what?
Vindication.
That's right.
There you go. So are you the master brewer here, or do you have somebody who does that and you just sort of do what you want to do?
I've always hesitated to call myself a master brewer because you can go through a 4-year program in Germany to get, a specific master brewer certification, and I didn't do that. And so I always felt, I think people give themselves that title. I never utilize that title. I'm not a title guy, period. I mean, if you ask me my title right now, I'm like, I don't know. I'm operator, I guess. I don't really care about titles. It's like, do the job. Right. I never use that term. I guess you could say head brewer. Yes. Do I write recipes? Do I still write recipes? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I worked at this brewery by myself for a year, so I did everything. I brewed all the beer. I packaged it. I kegged it all. I cellared it all. I distributed it all. I did everything. So for me, it was just kind of I do everything. I do everything. Here's the beer. I hope you like it. And here I am. I hope you like me. And I hope we can get along. And that's just kind of how I carry on.
But when you distill it all down, you brew the beer.
Yeah, for sure. I brewed it all early on. But when Grayson talks about how he came aboard here, that's one of the things that really does make us unique. Every person that works here, we've got about 15 full-time employees, another 10 part-time. There's not a person who works here today that ever worked in a brewery before. And the reason for that is I had never worked in a brewery before, and I experienced a lot of success very early on and thought, well, I seem to be doing a pretty good job myself, and I've got these people here who want to come and volunteer their time, and as a result of that, I got a really lengthy interview process with these guys. They figured out what I was about, what the brewery was about. I got to learn what they were about, what their work ethic is, and really figure out, who would be a good culture fit here. And so I just slowly, one by one, started hiring each of my volunteers. The first guy, Chris Burnleg Martinez, right? He helped make me the beer, and now I guess if you want to talk about titles, he's the head brewer. He's the one who now brews the beer. It's been a while since I've actually physically gone in and brewed the beer. Once I started to hand the reins over to other people, and we have 5 brewers now who brew all of the beer that we distribute. I, for a long time, continued to brew every new beer. The first batch of a new beer, I continued to handle that. But now at this point, I help with it, I write the recipe, and then those guys go about brewing it. And, for me, it's about trying to empower people to grow, to make this brewery better than what it was or what it is. And that's what it is about for us. If we brew a beer and we don't think it's top notch, we just dump it down the drain.
You could send it to my house. I'd probably be okay with it.
I wouldn't do it because it's I want it to be the best representation of what this brewery is.
Do it anonymously.
Yeah. All right. Here's this anonymous keg of Peticolas beer.
Is there a beer that you guys haven't done that has been in the back of your mind and you're thinking, boy, that's, you've always been thinking about, let's do that.
There are several styles that. There are several beers that I still want to get into the rotation and plan to get into the rotation, but patience is a virtue. Their time will come.
Well, I think that should about do it. I appreciate the invite. It's been fun. It's been informative. It's been entertaining. It's been delicious.
Good, yeah. Enjoy that beer.
That's a good
It's a big beer. Smooth as velvet will hit you like a hammer. So I hope you enjoy that beer on your road to furthering your mind when it comes to beer and whiskey.
I shall do so. And with that, guys, thanks a lot.
Cheers. Have a good day. Thanks for having us.
Thank you
really
so
enjoyed
much.
it, Russ.
See you next time.